Hi, everyone. My name is Vin Nguyen. I'm the Managing Artistic Director of Chopsticks. Sally, thank you so much for being here with us. This class was taught by Elizabeth last week on Thursday, July 11th at Creekside Socials. We had a little bit of a obstacle last week. So this online class is to follow up, the second follow-up, which today, Thursday, July 18th. We want to say thank you to Sarah and Rebecca for supporting our event and also for giving us this opportunity to do this online virtual class so that we can finish the project. So here is Elizabeth. This is a recorded session, so feel free to pause and go back and go back to any section that you were unclear about and follow along. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us again. So just a quick reminder, we're learning how to make this little bag that is a reversible bag. Pretty fun project. And we're learning some basic hand sewing stitches. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm just going to quickly remind you what we did last class and then move on from there. So first we cut two squares that were 8 by 8 inches. We cut four squares that were 8 by 4 inches, and then we cut 6 rectangles that were 2 by 16 inches. Now some of us had the smaller pieces of fabric that were 8 by 8. So we had to cut 12 rectangles of fabric. Okay, there we go. 12 rectangles of fabric that were 2 by 8, and then we had to put them together. So we talked about the right side of the fabric, which is where we see our pattern and what we want to see outside, and then the wrong side of the fabric. So we put them right sides together, and then that would give us our 2 by 16. So we would get a longer strip of fabric like this. So once we had all of our pieces cut out, we took our 8 by 8s and our 8 by 4s and we put them together like this. So we took our 8 by 8. Hold on a second. Is there a way I can stop the blurring? Do you guys know how I can do that with my screen? Just so like it doesn't blur when I'm trying to show something.
Yeah, you can. So you go to, go ahead, try me.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, there. Perfect. Yes, that's much better. Okay. So we took our squares and then put it right side together with our rectangles and stitch it along the edge. And then over here, we did the same thing. And we had a piece like this. So last class, we made sure that we had 2 of these. And we also had 6 of these. So I have 1, 2, 3 here. And I have all of my pieces here. So we had 6 of these. And these main ones over here. So this is where we left off last class, right? So now we're going to take these pieces, the longer pieces over here, and we're going to put them right sides together and we're going to fold them in half. So we have our right side over here, again, the pattern side, the side that you want to see on the outside, and you're just going to take it and fold it in half, like so, right? So once we fold it in half, you can go ahead and pin it together in place. You don't need a lot of pins, it's just to hold the fabric together. So I am just using 2 pins right here because I don't need that many pins. I just want to hold it together. Then you can take your ruler and just mark maybe a 1/2 inch, just so you have a line to follow, and it'll make it easier. So you can just mark a 1/2 inch from the edge. So I'm just gonna mark it and show you. Okay. So I went ahead and marked a 1/2 inch from my edge. And now I have a line to follow. And this is gonna be my guide or where I want to stitch. Okay? So now I'm going to take my needle and my thread. I already threaded my needle, but I'm gonna teach you guys just in case you don't know how to tie your knot. If you know a different way from this one, feel free to do it. Everyone has a different trick to tie their needles. This is the way that I find works for me. So this is how I do it, but if you have a different way, feel free to do so. So I grab my needle with my left hand with the sharp edge pointing again away from my hand. Then I take my thread and put it behind my needle. So like closer behind my needle. I mean, I'm looking at my needle. So for you guys, it looks like it's in front, but it's actually like behind. So while you're looking at your needle, you're gonna wanna place it behind your needle. So once you have it behind your needle, I grab this same thread here, wrap it around my needle 3 times. You can do two to 3 times, and then just pull it down. And then I have my knot. Well, you can, okay, there you go. Okay, so again, I took my needle, sharp edge with my left hand, sharp edge away from my hand, took the thread, put it behind my needle, wrap it 1, 2, 3 times, and then just pull the knot down all the way until I have a new knot. So once I have my knot, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the tail off. So all of these excess, I'm just gonna cut off. So I just have my knot, making sure that you're not cutting your knot off. You just wanna cut the excess. So once I have that, I'm going to start. So now since we're using like hand sewing techniques instead of machines, we're going to have to do a stitch that is called a back stitch. So we're going to take our fabric and we're going to start about 1/8 of an inch away from our edge. So we're not going to start right on the edge. We're going to start like about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to pull my needle through about 1/8 of an inch away. I'm going to pull it all the way. So pull my thread through. And then, so I have my needle, I pull my thread through. Again, 1/8 of an inch away. And now I'm gonna back stitch. So I'm gonna go back with my needle. This is a little tricky to show, but I'm gonna go back with my needle. So I'm, oh, hold on, let me make sure that doesn't come off. Right now, there we go. Okay, I'm going back with my needle. And then I'm gonna come forward. So I'm gonna go back and then make sure that my needle comes forward. Can you guys see there what's going on? So I went back with my needle, my thread. Here's the thread where I came out about 1/8 of an inch. I went back, stick my needle inside, and then came forward with my needle. Can you see that? Yes? Okay, great. So now I'm gonna pull my needle all the way through, my thread all the way through, and I'm just gonna keep doing that all the way. So I'm just gonna stitch back where my previous stitch is. So my needle is gonna go back again where my previous stitch is, and then come forward a little bit more, which is gonna look something like that. This is like kind of like halfway through. And then pull my needle all the way through. And it's going to start looking something like this in the front, and in the back we're going to see something like this. So again, I'm going back with my needle and then traveling forward a little bit, showing it one more time. Then pulling my thread all the way through. So I'm just gonna go ahead and keep working on this so we can move on to the next step. Again, if you fall behind, doesn't matter because this is going to be recorded. So you don't have to worry about keeping up with my pace. You can just come back to this recording as many times as you need. Okay, so I'm just gonna very quickly get this over here. So whenever we're hand stitching, this is the technique that we use. It's called a back stitch, and that's the strongest hand stitch out there. So there's many different hand stitching, but our back stitch is the one that is usually used whenever you wanna, well, back when people used to make clothes just by hand, this is the stitch that they would use. And it's kind of, once I'm finished, I'll show you guys, but it's kind of the stitch that you can see like the sewing machines do now. And this is your strongest stitch. So whenever you want something that you want it to stay there forever, basically, you want to do a back stitch. Because every time that you go back with your needle, you're creating a knot. So that makes it harder for your stitch to come undone. So I've gotten to the end of my fabric. So you'll see that you'll have a gap in there. So here, there I have some thread here, but then there's a gap here. There's no thread here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back one more time, like one extra time, and then just come back in the same place. And I have my thread just to cover this gap over here. I just don't want to see that gap. Okay. So now by doing that, now I don't have a gap in there anymore. And I'm gonna show you guys how to tie it off. So now that we have our thread at the very edge, we're gonna take a horizontal stitch. I'm gonna small stitch, like small horizontal stitch. I'm not going all the way through. I'm just grabbing a little bit of fabric with my needle. I'm holding on to my thread, and then I'm going to pull my needle all the way while I'm still holding on to my thread, because I don't want to lose this loop that I have over here. So what I'm going to do with this loop is I'm gonna thread my needle through the loop around maybe 2 times. You can do more if you feel so. 2 times should be enough. And then just pull my needle all the way through, my thread all the way through, and now I have my knot. So now this isn't going anywhere. So I can cut it off, cut my thread off. And that's going to be my first seam. So it should look something like this. And here it kind of looks like the stitch that a sewing machine would give you. And then in the back it looks a little messy, but it's okay because no one's gonna see that. So we're going to do that on both of our pieces. So again, we're going to take the right side, fold it in half. Make sure that it's right sides together. Mark about a 1/2 inch from the edge. I'm gonna go ahead and mark that. And you can, at this point, you can pin your fabric together if you want, just so it doesn't move on you. Just make sure that you don't add too many pins that they're gonna be in your way all the time. Just 2 should be enough. And then mark it. Again, go ahead and do that seam with the same techniques. So from now on, all the stitches that we're gonna do, we're just gonna do the back stitch. And now I'm just gonna go a little faster because I just don't want to miss anything. But at any point, if you need to go back to the recording where I explain a little bit better how to tie your knot and all of that, feel free to do so. Now I'm just gonna go a little faster so we can move on to the next step. And I'm sorry I'm not showing you guys my sewing. It's really hard to sew like this. So I'm just gonna do it here on my table really quickly. But I did show you guys the other one. Okay. So we should have our 2 pieces like so, and we have our seams here. I have my seam here. So once we have our pieces, what we're going to do is we're going to open them up so that our seam, the one we just did, is in the center. So my seam right now is in the center here. So this is the seam I just did. I opened it up so that it's in the center. And we're going to do something that every time we're sewing is very important to do. It's called opening up your seam. So every time you're stitching, we always make sure that the seam that we did has to be open. So we always have to open up our seams, just making sure that we open it up. You can press it a little bit with your hands. You don't need to iron it. Usually if you're making a garment or something, you do. You have to make sure that you press it very well. But with this fabric, it's so easy to just like press it a little bit with your hands. So just feel free to give it a good press with your hands. And you should have something that looks like this. So your seam that you did is going to be in the middle. And then you're just gonna make sure that you open it up. And then you can go ahead and pin it in place if that's going to make it easier for you to keep it open. Making sure that it's in place. So once we pin it in place, we can take a ruler and measure another 1/2 inch from the edge So just choose an edge, whichever you want to use, and just measure 1/2 inch from your edge. I'm going to take a ruler and show you guys. Got a little there. Okay, that's better. So now I have my 1/2 inch mark, and I'm gonna do the same. So like just back stitch from edge to edge, making sure that my seam is open. Go ahead and do that. So it should look something like this. I just finished stitching my first seam, and I'm gonna do the exact same thing on my other one. So again, this was the seam that we had done before. I'm gonna open it up and make sure that my seam is in the center. Open my seam. Let's just open it up. Pin it in place and just stitch it half inch from the edge. And it's okay if you have a little extra here, it doesn't matter. You should just stitch through the edge. So here I have a little extra, it's folding over, it doesn't matter. I'm still gonna stitch 1/2 inch from my edge. Okay. So once I have my piece, I should have a little bit of a bag here already with my seam here. I'm gonna open up my corner. So this is my seam that I just did. And I'm gonna go ahead and open it up here. Let me show this one here. I'm gonna open up here. This part is a little tricky to do it here. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna open up my seam and open up my corner and then just stitch a little bit from side to side. So I'm just gonna leave a triangle hanging and just do a quick stitch from side to side over here. So I have my triangle here and a stitch here. Again, we're doing a back stitch. And that's what's going to give our bag some shape. So it might be easier, you might find it easier to do this on your table because it's a little tricky. So just open your seam and just lay it on your table. So start opening it up with your fingers a little bit. Here you're probably gonna have to battle a little bit. So it might be easier if you're like on a table where you can open it. It might make it easier for you to handle your fabric that way. So you should have something that looks like this. So I open my corner, I open my seam, and just stitch from side to side. And I do the same on the other corner. So again, open my seam, move my fabric in the back a little bit just so I have a flat surface, and then stitch from side to side. Like this is what it should look like from the back. So I have a flat surface here, my seam open, and again, side to side, little triangle on the top. I should have something that looks like this. So now our bag is starting to get the shape that we need. So I'm going to do the same exact thing on my other piece. So again, this is the seam that we had just done, and we're going to open it up and stretch a little bit on the back just so we have a flat surface. Leave a triangle fabric and just stitch from side to side. Same thing on the other corner. So the next step might be a little scary for some of you, but it's okay. So we're going to cut a little bit of our excess off. Doesn't have to be as much if you don't feel comfortable. Just make sure that you cut a little bit off so it's easier to turn. Just make sure you don't cut off your stitching, just the excess, just a little bit of our excess. So I'm not getting any close, like I'm not getting too close to my stitching. I'm leaving about maybe like a 1/4 inch and just cutting my excess off. That will make it easier whenever we have to turn our piece. Cut my excess off, my corners. So once I've cut my excess off, I can just go ahead and turn one of them to the right side. So I just put my hand inside and just pull it out. And now it's very easy to turn because I cut my excess. So now I have my corners here. I should have something like this. That's how it's going to look. We're just gonna turn one of them to the right side. The other one we're not gonna touch for now. So we're gonna have this one, and we're gonna put them to the side for now. And we're going to grab our straps over here. And we're going to grab 3 at a time. So I have 3 of my 6 pieces here. We had 6, so I grabbed 3. And we're going to put them right sides together, so pattern sides together, and just stitch them together. So like mark about a 1/2 inch and stitch them together. Again, I'm gonna pin my fabric together so it doesn't move. So I stitched them 2 together. I'm gonna grab one more, so I'm gonna put the 3 of them together. So again, right sides together. Then mark 1/2 inch from the edge and just stitch it together. So at the end, you should have your 3 straps become one long strap. Okay. So once you do that, you can go ahead and open your seams like we did before. Just make sure that it's open. And again, just press it with your hand. Just make sure that it's open. Open all of your seams. I have more seams because I had to do the smaller pieces, so I have more seams. If you have the 2x16, you should only have two seams. So I open my seams, and now I have a longer strap over here, and I'm gonna do the same exact thing with my other 3. So again, right sides together, put them all together, stitch them together at the edges, and at the end I'm gonna have 2 very long straps. I did my first 2. Now I'm going to put them together, right sides together again with my last one. Mark my half inch. And just put them together, stitch them together. Okay, so now I have 2 very long straps of fabric, and I'm gonna take both of them. I have 2 very long straps of fabric here. So again, I put my 2x16s, my 3 2x16s together, and I have 2 pieces. And I'm gonna take my right side, so the pattern side, and I'm gonna put them together. And I'm going to stitch along both of these edges. So the long edge, I'm gonna stitch all the way, all the way, all the way, all the way, and all the way here. So from top to bottom along the long edge. And as I'm sewing, I wanna make sure that my seam allowances are open. So this is where like maybe having some pins would be nice. If you don't have pins, that's okay. You just have to go a little bit slower, making sure that your seam allowance stay open. And you're going to do from top to bottom all the way on both long edges. Right, this is probably what's going to take you the longest. Now, when I planned this class, I was hoping we were going to be able to use the sewing machines, so that would have made it faster for us. So I prepped one because I know that one takes a long time. So it's okay if you don't get it right now. It's going to take a little bit longer because it's a very long edge. So I prepped one to show you guys what it's going to look like. So I have my pieces here, and I stitched from the edge. I did all of 1/2 inch, and I did both of my edges all the way, keeping my seam allowance is open. So all the way, keeping my seam allowance open, keeping my seam allowance open, and I stitch all the way on both long edges. So once you have that, once you have done all the stitching through the long edges, you can go ahead and cut that seam allowance. So we're not gonna get too close to our stitching. We're just gonna cut the excess because we have to turn it around. And sometimes it's a little hard if we have a lot of extra fabric. So you're gonna take that seam allowance and you're just gonna cut it in half. So I am just cutting it in half, not touching my stitching, just my seam allowance. And if you excuse me 1 second, I'm just gonna grab my big scissors, my big fabric scissors, just to make the process a little faster. And here for me, I find it easier to cut standing up than sitting down. I have more mobility, so it's easier for me to do so. I have a lot of excess fabric and I've cut my seam allowance in half. As you can see, it's not a pretty cut, but that's okay. I'm not too concerned about it. I just want to take away some of my excess fabric so when I turn my straps to the right side, it's not going to be as complicated. I'm cutting halfway through my seam allowance, not touching my stitching, just cutting some excess. Okay, so now I have this long strap, and what I'm going to do is I'm gonna open up the pocket and just start pulling my fabric through. You can help, you can use a pen or a pencil, just make sure it's closed so you don't get it on your fabric, to help you start turning it around. It's a little tricky sometimes, so you just have to manipulate your fabric, start turning it around. So this is a process that requires a little bit of patience because it's a lot of fabric that we're trying to turn around. So it's okay if it takes you a little longer. It doesn't matter. It just requires a little bit of patience to be able to turn it around. You can see I'm turning it to my right side. So sewing is a practice that requires a lot of patience and a lot of accepting the process. Sometimes it goes faster, sometimes it takes longer. Every day it's different. So it's really nice. Some people sometimes find it stressful, but I think it's just a matter of learning to accept that things don't always go the way that we plan them. So it's nice, to learn. And even if you make mistakes, there's something to learn. And, worst comes to worst, you just rip it out. So you just start over and you rip it out and start over. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't work out the first time. So it's okay if at any point while you're working on this, you don't get it exactly how you want it. Maybe your seam is not as straight as you wish it was, or like maybe your fabric is looking a little wonky. That's okay. It takes practice. And every time that we make mistakes, we learn something from them. And that's what it's important.
Just a heads up, Elizabeth, we have about 5 more minutes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I lost track of time.
No problem.
No problem. I'm just gonna go ahead and show the next step. Okay, thank you for letting me know. So we have, we're gonna finish turning our straps out. So once you have it fully turned out, just like make sure you press them nicely. We're gonna grab our bags that we have put aside. So we're gonna take the one that is right side out. And then the one that we haven't turned around, we're just gonna put it inside of our other one. So you'll have just one at the end. So I'm just making sure that I'm putting it inside. And I like to, you don't have to, but I think it's nice. I like to match where my seams are. Like so. So my seam is here, and then I have another seam here. And I just like to match them. So make sure that they're both like so. I matched it. And then just for the sake of the demonstration, I'm just gonna go ahead and show you with have my strap turned around. But once you have this, what you wanna do is you wanna fold your edge inside, so towards the inside. So I have my edge here, and I'm gonna fold it towards my inside. Fold it, fold it, fold it, and I'm gonna do the same with the other piece that's inside. So this one, same thing, fold my edge, but this time I'm gonna fold it towards the outside. So both of my edges are gonna meet here. I'm gonna have two pieces that meet like this. And once I folded both my edges, I can go ahead and pin it around. And I'm gonna insert my straps on my side. So where my seam is, I'm just gonna insert my strap there, place it, and then insert the other one on the other side where the seam is, place it, and then I'm just gonna stitch along the edge with a back stitch the whole way around. So like the whole way, I'm just gonna stitch all of it, making sure that my edges are folded so I don't see any raw edges. So I'm just gonna fold my edges like so and just stitch around the whole way. So making sure that so like once everything's placed and stitched, you should get your bag. So it's gonna look something like that. And what's really cool about it is going to be a reversible bag, because then you can turn it around and you're gonna see what you had on your other side. So you're gonna have a reversible bag. So again, you put, just in case, I know I went a little fast in that one, you took your two pieces, one is right side out, the other one is wrong side out. Put the one that is wrong side out inside, making sure you match your seams, your side seams. You place your strips in the middle of both and then fold. So my strip is right there. And then I fold my edge inside so I don't see any raw edges, and then stitch along the edge. It's the standard. So like I have my layer one here, layer two is hard, I cannot pull them apart, but layer two, layer one, and it's sandwiched in between. So like maybe the lighting is not helping a lot. So like this is the layer, then the strap is in between, and then there's the other layer. Is that a little
much
better?
Yep.
Okay. I planned this to be done with machine, so it might take a little longer than expected, but that's okay, because you know it's a very, I find a very like calming practice, especially hand sewing. It's something that you can play some music, maybe put a background TV show or movie and just like hand stitch, take your time.